Greetings, everybody. It's Jim. For almost 50 years of collecting board games, being in the industry and all that, it's no surprise that I would have an extensive collection after a while. The thing is, it has dwindled down enormously. I mean, bouncing around and moving as much as I have, the things you own start owning you. That was very apparent after a while. And, it's just like, now I just want what I play. Or if I don't really play it, why is it there for a reason? So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go over the games that I do have over 50 years. What makes a cut? What doesn't? What criteria do I use to put something in the shelves? And as an example of whittling things down, even in my micro game category, because I actually bought a whole bunch of micro games off eBay. I just got into it one day, and I bought a lot of them thinking, because I've been crunching down micro games a lot on my own, basically. Otherwise wasn't originally a micro game. But I could easily fold it down, especially the SPI ones, fold them down, and they would be that macro format, 8.5 by 5 by 5. That just makes it that they're small enough. However, a lot of them that I did buy there don't make the cut for specific reasons, and I'm going to get into that where I thought they once were. So today, I'm going to be going over you with my shelves and what makes the cut. And 3 Kickstarters you should know about before we begin. Columbia Games has the Hard-Rolled Republic of Tharda hardback that's out right now. It's the next in line for their hardback series for the system-agnostic setting of Hard-Rolled. Use whatever system you like. The setting is incredible. The Republic of Tharda. And next we have Steve Jackson Games with Ogre Miniature Set 4. If you haven't played Ogre yet, it's a classic game for a reason, folks. Investigate it for yourself. And even if you aren't a miniatures guy, check out the game. Good Lord Almighty, it is one of the most fantastic war games ever, and it's great introduction to war games if you've got kids. If you've got kids, get them into some Ogre. And finally, Power Cell Games, developed by yours truly, but this one's created by David Pulver, is Operation Meteor. Can you survive the AI apocalypse? It's a solitaire game from yours truly at Power Cell Games. Links are down below. Go check them all out. So what is the criteria of getting a game on my shelves? Now, I want to make it perfectly clear. These games mean something to me in some way, shape, or form, but it is not meaning that there are games on here that are terrific that aren't going to be on my shelves. And you'll see the reasons why as I go through the rules. And the reasons for these really are based on playability and usability. I don't have to own every game in existence, neither do you. I highly suggest you really think about that if you want to lighten your wallet or just lighten the load in your mind, or you're trying to get rid of a collection. It's a hard thing to get rid of a collection after a while. Believe me, it was one thing. But once you start, it really gets easier to let some things go. And the first rule is it's got to be 1 to 2 players by default. I either got to be able to solo it. That makes it, and even a 2-player game I can solo. Usually, I can just kind of play through the rules and such. But generally, because 2 players, I can see myself getting another player to play a game for 4 hours if it's a big game, or muddle through the rules if we just haven't played in a while. It's another thing to do that with 3 or more players to show up on the same day, be willing to go through the rules like that. That's very hard to do. So by default, it has to be a 1 or 2 player game. All right, now this one's a big one, and it actually comes from experience, from 50 years of gameplay, always wanting epic games, like 6 to 8 players or something like that, all crowding around a table saying, making treaties and, stabbing people in the back and, making wheeling and dealing and stuff like that. I love that kind of thing. The thing is, I learned, you don't need games that last 4 to 6 hours to do that. You don't need it at all, whether it be Risk as when I was a kid, a great game called Supremacy when I was in the Navy, and even modern games like Twilight Imperium. You don't need it. You don't even need games like Eclipse, only supposed to take an hour and a half, 2 hours. You don't even need to go that far. There are games out there that offer all that for under 45 minutes. All right, and that's just the basic rule in general, because a lot of the gamers that I have now, I can play with anybody. You don't even have to be hardcore gamers, because the thing is about games that are 45 minutes or less, they might be a complicated game as far as interactions go or how to learn the game better, but the basic rules are actually usually quite simple. You could crack them open and learn them. It'd take 10 minutes to read them. You already figured out how to play. Slapshot from Columbia Games is a terrific example of a game like that. It is complete chaos. And believe me, that was a big convention winner. Like 200 people at the board game championships in Pennsylvania. That was a big deal. It was really fun to see that 200 people. I didn't see it personally, but I mean, Grant was there. It was like 200 people playing Slapshot, never played it before in their life, but then it became a yearly thing. Anyway, I have people over and stuff, and we can play games. They don't even have to be gamers. So 45 minutes multiplayer max is rule number 2. So Rule 3 has a lot of subsections to it, so let's just go over it. It's all based on criteria. The first is just pure gameplay. The game could be actually ugly as heck, not very popular, whatever. There's something that I've seen in it, and it's just simply because it's a good game, and it deserves to be here, and because there's a lot of classical games in here, you're going to see that a lot, because production values back in the 80s and 90s just weren't all that. But you could definitely see the passion in a lot of these games, and that's another reason why I think they belong on the shelf. Now, the thing about Rule 3A is it's really broad, because it's a good problem to have. There's a lot of good games out there, but I gotta whittle it down somehow, and Rule 3B starts that process. The first one is just some games just deserve to be on the shelf because of nostalgia, so they take up some room. The thing is, like for instance, 2 of the games that I would say definitely are on my shelf for that, not that they're not great, is Steve Jackson's Illuminati and SPI's Ragnarok, Twilight of the Gods. And the reason is I seen those 2 games at a Hills department store on discount, and it was just the weirdest games I had ever seen in my life. I mean, you have to understand, if you're a younger viewer, that in the 80s and 90s, games were not like you have now whatsoever. I know, get my walker, I'll say, back in the day, but that's the truth of it. I mean, they were more kids' games, okay? Think Hero Quest as an advanced game, and you'll understand the breadth of how much, as a kid, I had to deal with, okay? While you guys are messing around with Magic the Gathering as a default, I was messing around with Monopoly as something advanced. Okay, so when Illuminati and Ragnarok came out, I was blown away, and I had to pick them up. So there are a few things, and when I go through the list, the shelf piece by piece, I'll tell you which ones those are definitely for nostalgia purposes. Now, Rule 3C is pretty much about the criteria of research. Some games are there just because I want to experiment with them. They're really on the shelf, no pun intended, about being on the shelf. Talon from GMT Games is one. I know it's already a good game. I've leafed through it a little bit, and I got the idea. It's on Starfleet Battles Light, and it's got a lot to it. And I wonder, though, is it going to make the cut after I really sit down and play it? Or will I have some extra room? So that is one of the things for some games that are there. It's not too many. Some people might argue that my micro games are research, because there's some of them I will never probably play again or won't ever play. I think Trailblazer from Metagaming is one of them, but that's more of a collection, and that's actually going to be the next rule. Rule 3D is easy enough to understand. I've started to acquire a collection. I am a completist at heart, especially when I love something. I know I'm going to have to do a video. I really fell in love with 4th edition D&D. I know. The thing is, it's a tactical war game. That's what I liked about it. It was like an advanced version of Hero Quest. Me and my brothers used to play that, and I would say this would be our D&D. So what did I do? And I was kind of lucky, because Dungeons & Dragons at the time, everybody was dumping on 4th D&D, and they were dumping it out, and I got books on the cheap. I think I collected everything for 4th edition at the time for $700. A few years later, fell in love with the Fantasy Trip. Out goes everything 4th edition, and my new D&D was the Fantasy Trip, which I collected everything of. As of right now, I've got just about everything in the fantasy trip. So there's a point also, and the fantasy trip is an example, of having to have everything becomes a part of saying, there's a part where you gotta say, okay, I can't have everything. Otherwise, I'm spending too much. I'm getting things I don't need. And then when does that start to happen? I'll go over that in a little bit here about how to whittle down the complete collection, but a collection within your collection, if you want to say it like that. So rule number 4 is everything must fit my gaming table. Now, it's a wide table that I have. I love this table a lot. I liked it so much when I bought it in Washington. As soon as I moved to the East Coast, I bought it again. I didn't transfer that on over. I just bought a new table. The link is down below. The price fluctuates. I bought it like $169. It's a good table. It's 60 inches wide. It's only 23 and a half deep, which is more than enough for most games. It fits just fine. Okay, but there are a few things that are usually like matte oriented or deluxe versions of things that don't fit, such as the designer edition of Ogre from Steve Jackson Games. I loved it. I loved the big counters and everything, and the epic scale of it. But at the same time, it just missed it by like an inch and a half or so, and it overlapped, and I didn't want to deal with that. So it's like it was a good excuse to move that along. I have the original Ogre anyway in all the supplements, so it was a redundancy. Another thing that was a redundancy were the playmats for the fantasy trip. I already have the mega hexes. I could actually print out maps if I wanted to, just that would actually fit. But those mats, a lot of them would be off by an inch, and that's just annoying. So it was a good excuse to get rid of that. So the only thing I really ended up getting rid of were redundancies. So that's not a bad thing. Were there exceptions? Sure there were. There was one exception. And that, by the way, is what I'm going over next. So rule number 4 is exceptions are absolutely allowed. I just have to make a really good argument for it. And it's really got to outweigh the rule that it's breaking by a few margins, okay? So let's use an example. Dune from Gale Force 9 is a multiplayer game that is definitely not going to take 45 minutes. It is going to take, realistically, 3 or 4 hours if you're playing it. And maybe even more if you're playing it right. It's just one of those games. So why, after saying all that earlier about why I don't play games like that, did I want to keep this one? Well, the first is nostalgia factor in 2 different categories. First, it's the Gale Force 9 redid it. It's the original Avalon Hill version of the game, not one of the newer ones. It's the Avalon Hill version of the game, which is a great game. And also it's Dune. I love Dune itself, the series. I love the old movie from David Lynch. I know people harp on it, but it was the right one for my mind at the time as a younger man. That made me ask all kinds of questions. Some of them, I even understood how silly some of the stuff was, but it was awesome in a lot of other ways, in more ways than it ever was worried about being silly. Then later on, the Sci-Fi Channel's version came out, which in my opinion is the best cerebral version of Dune. And well, the newest version of Dune is, I don't know what to think of that. I'm not really impressed, no offense to anybody that likes it, but to me it's just, hey, let everybody just stare at the screen for 2 hours straight with blank faces and just get some elephant to play a tuba for background music for 2 hours. That's what it is to me. Not really excited about that. However, some good visual effects. Anyway, I love the books, even the newer books written after Frank Herbert's death. I think there's a little bit of filler in there for runtime. Books can have a runtime too, for as all I'm concerned. 700 pages, right? Got to pad that thing. But overall, I really enjoy it. Can you tell that I like Dune? Okay, so definitely that's the reason why Dune is on the shelf. Okay, so exceptions like that are allowed, and I'll go over those as I go over the shelves if there's any more there. So let's go over shelf number 1 and what's on it, or I should say what's in it. Everything that's on the shelves are really just decoration, and they're going to find their way on hanging shelves in a little while here, so it's what's in that matters. So shelf number 1 is all about wargaming. On the top shelf, Car Wars on the left, Ogre on the right, both from Steve Jackson Games. This definitely hits both the great game and nostalgia purposes. Car Wars being a more complicated game, while Ogre is actually much more simple. I would say that is probably the best Ogre introductory war game you could give a young kid, because it's going to capture their attention, but you can teach them wargaming mechanics with it. Okay, very cool. Car Wars is just an awesome idea, and I love the game, and I loved it so much that there was a place called Penn Station back in the day when I was a kid, and all the snow that everybody's getting around the country right now, that's Erie, Pennsylvania default, and that should have happened for us in November. The fact that it's the middle of January and we're just getting hit with it, we're like, what's going on here? It was really weird. But we finally got it. It's kind of Erie, Pennsylvania stuff. So, but imagine that, and that me as a young boy taking the bus to get all the way over across town, 30 minutes away, which would take about an hour on the bus, just to get to Penn Station, just to look at the box for a little while, be there for half an hour. And this is what I would do. I would do that, go to Walden Books or Toy World. They're just book and toy stores back then, and just to look at things, just to get a glimpse, because I didn't have the money to buy this stuff. I did not have a disposable income whatsoever. But I finally got my hands on Car Wars, and I just remember having them double wrap that and put it in my coat so it wouldn't get anything. I didn't want to risk anything. I was a little bit more of a over obsessed worry ward a little bit about things like that back then, but I really loved Car Wars. There's no doubt about it. When I got home, I was so excited. Anyway, the second shelf shouldn't be a surprise. That's all micro games. It's how many I own now. It used to be just the 20. It used to be just a few, because I wanted to do a few videos on the history of wargaming, and then I just fell in love with the stuff, and I decided to collect all the metagaming things. And it started just for the science fiction titles, but then I got so many, I'm like, well, I might as well get the historical ones too, and then the meta ones, and then so I can get now I have the complete collection. And of course, along the way, in the middle of that, I got the Task Force games, one and the same thing happened, and then the SPI ones, and the same thing happened. Then I noticed that some SPI games, like the Voyage of the BSM Pandora, was easily folded up and put away because it's actually quite small. And so there's a few other games that I found that were just the same thing, and I made them small. And now I've gone a little too far, got a little bit too ambitious, and like I said at the beginning of the video, I bought a whole bunch, and some of them aren't the small ones that I thought they were. I'm pushing too hard. I'm going to have to start whittling those down. On the bottom is all the counters for the micro games in those flambeau boxes. You can find the flambeau boxes at Walmart that I use. They're great for miniatures. I use them for all the counters for all the micro games just to put away. I use them for the counters for the fantasy trip. I want to forget about which flambeau I use. I will find a link to them, though, hopefully, and put it down below for you so you can get them if you desire. And on the bottom left is, of course, Illuminati. Now, I did not keep the original box. My version of Illuminati from Steve Jackson Games is the one they made in the 80s. I got the deluxe set of that and all the expansions. Just the cards only. I didn't keep the third expansion or anything like that, which was like more of a chart of changing things. I just wanted to make the basic game on that. But I got the dice bag, and I even made my own little box that carries all the cards in them. So pretty cool. And I should put a link of where, I made that on the Game Crafter, and it's just a really cool box for all the cards, and it fits all the expansions. I've got them sleeved, so it's good to go there. So that's all in shelf number 1. All right, shelf number 2 is a complete rule breaker. It's just kind of funny. Why have rules in the first place, Jim? But the thing is, the first rule it breaks is it's actually not the correct title in the technical sense. It should be called role-playing games, but really 95% of it is the fantasy trip, so that's what I think it deserves to be called. Again, another game from Steve Jackson Games. What can I say? The guy's my Willy Wonka. And I told him so. I'm completely waiting next time I see him at Gen Con for him to start dancing around and singing, and for his staff to start dancing around anytime they see a kid misbehave in line or something like that. Throw him into the void, or something equally crazy. That'd be a sight to see. But yeah, 95% of this is the fantasy trip, including all the old books to the fantasy trip and the micro games to the fantasy trip. And a lot of that is playability because you can't get those modules anymore, and they're fun. And I've done definitely videos on that, but also for research because the old school fantasy trip, even though the game has really not changed much at all, there are changes that actually, the characters were much more powerful, and they back then, and they would go through a bigger dungeon, much like standard D&D was at the time. Now it's a little bit more micro dungeon-ish is all you can actually handle, and I really like actually what they've done. They made the game a little bit deadlier, and it already was kind of deadly to begin with, but actually it's really good where it is right now. Anyway, the only other things that I have, or I should mention, I don't have everything for the fantasy trip anymore, though I used to, because I mentioned this when I was doing rule number 5. Was the thing is I don't use the mats because I got to be able to play on that table. I can use the regular wizard map and melee map and the mega hexes on that table, but the maps just didn't fit. I'm like, I gotta stick with the rule. So all the mats went away, and they just took up space. And I gave somebody a really good deal on them, and they got them. So I'm happy with that. And that includes the game Ogre, by the way. I used to have all those big maps. Then I played the my video on Ogre, and I did a scenario report, and I'm like, I'm having just fun just with this with the regular counters, and that was nostalgia. And even though I love that big box set, again, having it there and lugging it around, stuff like that, for me, I would still love to have that, but having the little pocket box was just fine. All right, but anyway, back to the fantasy trip here. I do have some exceptions. And it grew from being a completionist in the first place because there were 2 modules that weren't done by Steve Jackson or Metagaming at the time back in the day. It was made by Game Lord, so I picked those 2 up, and then I also noticed that the other 2, there was 2 other modules that probably would have been the fantasy trip. You just took ideas from them, so it was still kind of connected, even though it used the Thieves Guild system that the Game Lords came out with when they couldn't write for the fantasy trip. They really wanted to, but something happened in between, and they just stopped the license for that because Metagaming technically just went out of business. So they made the 2 modules anyway, so I picked those up, and then I started getting into their writing because I thought it was really good, and it fit that old school feel. So I ended up getting all the Thieves Guild stuff. So I've got technically another system that I'll never use, but I love it's easy enough to adapt. There's no real monsters in Thieves Guild. Everything about those books, and I've done a video on it. It's just all about basically brigands and trying the things that they do, because a lot of old Dungeons and Dragons was that anyway, murder hobos, right? But these ones would stay in place. You could actually play campaigns where your guys were just in the Thieves Guild in a certain spot and just play that out. So that's why I have a lot of the Game Lord stuff in there too. But overall, definitely this is 95% fantasy trip. All right, so shelf number 3, I could definitely talk a little bit more about more diverse games here because there's so many games that just took up one part of the shelf, and there's still one here that does that too. But this one has a more diverse crowd, with the exception of the micro games in shelf 1. It's just that these games have spines, while the micro games didn't, so I can't really talk about all of them. I'll talk about more about what I'm trying to squeeze into the micro games rather than them themselves, because you already know that I have all of them anyway from SPI, Task Force Games, and Metagaming. So, that's easy enough to understand what I own. Anyway, shelf number 3 reminds me that I almost had another rule, which is no miniatures. I appreciate miniatures. I love a good paint job. I hate painting. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. I'm too impatient. I can do it if I really wanted to. I definitely did when I had the time, when I owned my game store before the kids came in, and that's when I would do it. But I still, there's a bit of accomplishment when I did a good job on them, but I'm a gamer and I want to play. And I can't do that right now. I want to play rather than paint miniatures. Now, for Silent Death, why it's such an exception, it's my favorite spaceship combat game of all time. It is the best one. I've done a video on it. You can definitely check it out. I used to have so many miniatures. I used to have 4 of each large ship, capital ship, 8 of each medium ship, and 16 of each small ship. Okay, and I still do have them in those quantities. It's just that a whole bunch of ships actually left, and the reason why is because there was a lot of filler I found out in there, and I needed an excuse to get rid of some. So I did some research on the game a little bit more, and like the later years, they were just getting old molds to make more ships because Silent Death was hot, man. So they make more ships, and of course they make more money, and they just kind of can make an excuse of coming out with some more stuff, and they just didn't come off as well, and they certainly didn't look as good. You know, they were just two different style types. While the newer one was just definitely more sleek and streamlined as far as looks go, in my opinion, with the exception of a few factions. All you need to play Silent Death is really the plastic ships and any of the ships in the next Millennium book, and that's it. But Silent Death, great game. Up top we have Blitz Bowl, which, you know, I have Blitz Bowl, which is a genre of Blood Bowl from Games Workshop. It's the only Games Workshop game I own. But the thing is, Blitz Bowl is much simpler, and that's more of the speed of like me and my little brothers would play. You know, they're more. I would have them over for Hero Quest, Warhammer Quest. That's what they kind of liked, and they just like Games Workshop, and that's cool because my brother's an artist, and my brother just, you know, he just thinks that the artwork's cool as well. But my brother Mike, not the artist Chris, but my brother Mike actually can hold up his own when he comes to painting figs, to the point where my brother Chris be like, man, that's good, and he's up to par with anything Chris could do. He may not be able to draw like Chris can, but man, can he put paint to figure, you know? But as far as Blitz Bowl is concerned, as far as my gaming aspects of it, I've got 8 teams which are diverse enough. You know, there's something about Blood Bowl that they have a lot of teams, just like Silent Death. It's so popular, they made all these teams, and some of them are very similar. And it's like, okay. So I just got 8 of the basic teams that I could, and so I could have my own league. All right, and hopefully someday my brothers will paint them up for me, you know, because they want to play. So, you know, every year we'll pick 2 more teams and they'll paint them up, and hopefully that's the plan, so I get them to paint it for me. So on to the second shelf. You know, Talon is my research project, as I mentioned earlier. It's like a Starfleet Battles light. It's very good for solo play. It got all the ships in it that you would have for the basic ships in Starfleet Battles, but it doesn't have more than that, though. It doesn't have weirder alien-like ships. It's just pretty much just the basic, like, Romulans, Klingons versus Federation, and that's what you're getting there. I wish they would come out with more expansions, so that's the only thing that's hindering that from being a shoo-in to stay there, even though I have got to research and play it to really find out if I feel that way, but I've heard good things. So that's my research, and so it's on the cusp for being gone. Victory is definitely my favorite Columbia Games game. You would think I would have more of them, but again, it was all about shelf space. I'll be addressing that in a little while here, but it is the one, if I had to pick, there it is on my shelf. Dune from Gale Force 9, already talked about that. The other one that does not look like it has a title is this weird esoteric game that I've got to come up with its own little video for, and I forget the name of it. And next on the list is this really weird game called the Quantum Game, which weird game, I gotta do my own little video on it. It's a mix between Parcheesi, chess, and it's just a lot of luck, and it's just one of the games that you can play with like up to 4 players. It's great. And it's just, I played it when I was working the medieval fair circuit with me and my buddies at night, and it's just a fun little game. It's one of those games that, yeah, there's some luck involved, so to really know if you're good at it, you got to play it 7 times against everybody, and the best out of 7 wins. But it's fun. It's really a good, luck. It's strategy. It's just all of that stuff. It's kind of like Dragon Parade, where I've done a video on that, where yeah, you got to account for luck sometimes and stuff. I take advantage of it where you really think things are going. Next is Dragon Master. Did a video on that. Almost belongs in the role-playing section because that's where I would really use it. And it's a nostalgia thing because it's just beautiful artwork, and it was one of those things that just caught my eye. I've done a video on it. I can tell you all the reasons for it, but it is a beautiful little game. It's a game of card tricks, not card tricks like Magic, but tricks like in spade if you're playing spades. It's just a souped up version of that, but it's really done well. Ragnarok, I already said why that's there. That can be, actually, I know I can fold that over to make it a micro game. I don't do it to keep the original box. That's the only reason. Otherwise, I would definitely put it as a micro game. I could easily do it. Berserker, kind of the same thing. I could make that a micro game if I wanted to. From Flying Buffalo, one of the things that really stand out about Berserker, and I think I did a video on that too, it's just a solid box. When you hold that, it was one of the most solid game boxes I've ever encountered. For whatever reason, game boxes are known to be pretty flimsy. TSR especially, back in the 80s and 90s, But for some reason, you could put a cannonball on this thing, and I don't think it'd break. That's an exaggeration. But it's a good game, though. It's a good game. It's just like Ogre in Space, quite honestly. With, the big ogre in space, however, is run by robots, not just artificial intelligence. So you can break into the Berserker ship and kind of take care of the robots from within with boarding actions. Pretty cool stuff. Another nostalgia one, The Last Starfighter from FASA. That's another spaceship combat game. Pretty basic. Nothing really out of the ordinary. Could it be expanded on? Sure. Easy enough. And you would have to make scenarios for it. I do have the small micro game expansions in it. I don't have them with the other micro games because they're a little bit, there's a lot to them. There are some games I have from Dwarf Star Games, by the way. I have a lot of Dwarf Star games. I have all the Dwarf Star games for the micro games over there. Those were hard to find, but I got them all. But they were definitely thicker. But they made the cut in there, and I just kept the Last Starfighter ones in there because they just seem to all belong. Mix of nostalgia and a great game is Starship Troopers from Avalon Hill. One of the very first war games that I really tried to think I could tackle. It went over my head as a kid. It was, as much as they try to teach you things one-on-one, I was just too young to really grasp these things. And later on, I've done videos on them. I've been having a lot of fun learning them. I've got to go on to scenario, I believe, 4 now, and I really got to tackle that. And all the other ones I've done videos on. Star Traders from Steve Jackson Games, from Isaac Asimov Presents. A very good video, a game about commerce. It's actually quite fun. Starfist is like Omega race in space. If you remember the Omega Space video game, Steve Jackson did a game and said, hey, if that was the game, this was what it would be. There's a video on that. You should definitely check it out. And Orbit War, another one from Steve Jackson Games. Basically, it was just, those two Starfist, Star Traders, and Orbit War, quite honestly, there's no nostalgia factor. I didn't own any of these when I was a kid. These were almost more research-based, and they just stuck around, mainly because I owned so much Steve Jackson Games stuff that they just stuck, and I appreciate them all. They could be micro games. I think Starfist could be micro game. I think Orbit War could be micro game, not Star Traders. But Orbit War is... you're out in space, and it's the United States versus Russia at the time. Satellites going around, and it's a lot of maneuvering. So I really like that one. And it's kind of funny, the more I look at these, the more I just realize that I have really not too many modern games. So as I was going through that last bit there on shelf number 3, when I was going through Star Traders, Starfist, and Orbit War, I'm like, wait a minute, where are my modern games at? I've got modern games, don't I? I mean, is Talon and Blitzball the only modern games I have? I mean, Dune's a newer version of an older game, so that doesn't count. Are those the only modern games that I have? Do I have such disdain for newer things? Am I holding on to nostalgia so much? Have I gone back in time with the micro games so much that I forgot anything that was newer that's cool? And it's like, well, no, I forgot that most of the games that I like that are newer are actually the multiplayer games that take 45 minutes or less. A lot of my newer games are based off of that. So where are they? Well, they used to be next to Blood Bowl there on the top, and some of them used to be in the middle, where that little middle section where the dice bags are for the fantasy trip, just for somewhere to put them because they were really weird to put around. That brings me to another rule that I broke just recently as I moved into these apartments just about 2 weeks ago, learning that I had some extra space to fill. Can you guess? Yes, I broke down and got 2 more gaming shelves. There was a number of reasons for this. Mainly, it wasn't just because I wanted more games. It actually started off with 2 reasons. Basically, there's next to the 3 shelves that I have, there was just this big blank space until I get to my desk, as you can see there on the right, and it just stood there. And I have 6 hanging shelves that I want to put up, but I didn't want to put all 6 shelves up on the top of the other games. And if I put 3 here and 3 on the other wall, it would look weird with nothing on the bottom. So it just makes sense to have 2 more shelves. Plus, it actually lets me put the multiplayer games in a spot because they were the hardest things to place in the other things. They were always like the miscellaneous games that would just hide out because I didn't want to get rid of any of those. All those have a reason that I want to keep them. And they were just all weird to put somewhere. And as you might have heard already, I put them in the middle of shelf number 2, the fantasy trip, which really didn't belong. That's all role playing. It's supposed to be all role playing. So having it in the middle and breaking it up was just weird. So now I can get Reiner Knizia games because I'm a big fan of his. So there's a lot of other multiplayer games I want to get. Also, it gives me a chance to really showcase my Power Cell games that I've made a little easier instead of packing them one on top of another at the end, putting all the Dungeon Runner cards on top. Somebody comes over and I want to show them the games that I've made. I got to take all 25 decks off and then just pull that out. It doesn't make it very easy. So now I'll have a space for them. And of course, the accessories that I have will have their own shelf space, including the dice were packed somewhere in some of the other shelves and such. So I'll have easy access to everything. My Wargame counter cutter. I mean, they're easy to access now, but they're blocking the games, right? My little template from Game Crafter that they give you for 90 cents. I suggest everybody get one of those. Can I say I've really used it? But it's really kind of cool. And it's just and all the dice. I can put everything on one shelf and easier access for everything. So let's go over shelf number 4, the multiplayer shelf. It's not too long because I got enough there. Not too much there, I should say. But it's going to fill out pretty quickly because I had to get rid of a few games because, of course, my rule about not having room. And these things always fit so weirdly. I couldn't Tetris them in. But now I think that's going to fill out pretty well. Nightmare Chest from Steve Jackson Games, a nice little chest variant. I have both sets, and they all fit in one box. That was great. Another thing about having more shelves is now I can take my chest bag out of my closet and put it on top of one of the shelves. So now all my games are really in one spot, which is nice. Might even have a place for my chess books, actually, now that I come to think of it. High Society from Reiner Knizia. You knew that name was coming. I definitely loved it. And the thing is, High Society is also nice because this is the Eagle Griffin version. So they came out with about 12 to 20 games that were really high in production value, and they just added to the feel of the game, which is nice. I can appreciate a game that doesn't have that and just counters. I mean, like the wargaming stuff that I've got, but I do appreciate a nice feel of a game. And so there's a few more Eagle Griffin games that I think I want to get. There's a Sherlock Holmes one that's in that set that I'd like to get. I don't want to get all of them because not all of them are gold. I'm not going to get locked into getting all 20 of those just because. I could have been convinced if I liked like 75% of them, but I think there's only 2 or 3 that I really, really care about. And also by Reiner Knizia, Dragon Parade. People dump on that a little bit because they say it's a big luck game, and if you only play it once and that's your knee-jerk reaction, well, of course you're going to get it because it is a luck game. But if you play it 7 or more times, you find out there is a strategy, and you will win more often than not, and that's special. So I really like Dragon Parade. underrated game. I got a video about that. You should take a look at it. Shadows over Camelot is on the cusp because I haven't played it yet, but I'm all for finding out because it is supposed to be a whittled down version of the same game. Not that the main game was anything overdone, and it wasn't exactly lengthy. It's just if it's travel portion, I could put a small version of it somewhere, and it plays much the same way. What do I want out of it? I want a game that has that accusing factor because that's what Shadows of Camelot was supposed to be all about. So if it fills that void. I don't need the main game. So we'll find out. Bottom of the Ninth is the most beautiful thematic game I have ever seen. And that's why it's there. Even if it plays mediocrely. And quite honestly, to play it, it's kind of like rock, paper, scissors. But the thing is, that's actually what baseball is to a degree. The pitcher can get that pitch anywhere they want to. They rarely lose control of it. So it's really them and the batter trying to guess what they're pitching. All right, so there is a rock paper scissors element to it. So even though that sounds bad, it's actually quite accurate. I want to play it a few more times so I can get a final verdict of it and everything like that. But the thing is, thematically, it's a beautiful game. I mean, the cards look like they're from the 1980 baseball cards. Even the sticks of bubble gum are in there. Not real bubble gum, but they're used for another purpose. I forget what. But they're in there too. I mean, and there's other components that are really solid. And they get that in a little box, and it's just nice and heavy. There's something about that just has a good feel. The Isle of Dr. Necro is a cooperative card game that's kind of got that science fiction, science fantasy 1950s feel, or the serials from Flash Gordon maybe. You're trying to escape the island, and it's pretty cool. The only thing is the game kind of unbalanced? If you're drawing cards, you have to have the right combination to get out. That's the worry I have. I've played it a few times, and I want to beat it, but at the same time, I'm like, is the only way to win getting the right combination, not the right strategy. There's a difference there. So if it's the right combination, well, you can already, once you beat it, you can already tell if you've lost by not getting the combination. So I'm up in the air on that one. I want it to work though because it's it's a pretty game. Of course, Coup. Everybody knows about Coup pretty much. That's an exciting game. I really like that one a lot. The Art of War, another Reiner Knizia game. That game I play the most out of all these. All right, you should definitely pick that up if you want. I play with the missionaries when they come over at game night. Whenever I bring this over for a game night somewhere, I'm always bringing the Art of War. People like that. It's a dice game. It's almost like pressure luck Yahtzee. You just gotta roll dice to try to take over castles, and you can take over other people's castles. There's a little bit of, I wouldn't say screw your neighbor, but it's like, hey, you got to go for it, and you got to really pay attention to who's in the lead and what would work for you. It's a good game in that regard. And then I got two card games, 789 and Blink. Those I had in my game store, and I had a ladder tournament that would constantly go on, and I'd have a champion. These kids would be flipping cards over. Both of them are based off of the idea of real quick determination. Like you got to play the number after a number. It's just long story short, but you're constantly trying to, and the other guy's putting cards over the top of the other card, and you got to switch and stuff like that. It's hectic. And then the same thing with the Blink game. That's the same idea, only with shapes. So it's a very good cerebral test for kids to keep them sharp, and I really like that a lot. Last one is a recent thing of mine, a little bit bigger of a box, is Untold. If you've heard of the story cubes, I forget whose story cubes they are, but it's pretty interesting. And the idea is you have up to 4 people, and you're all making an episode of a TV show. Rory, that's it, Rory Story Cubes. And the thing is that worries me about it is this how Hollywood makes their stories now? Because if you ever heard of Dramatica, it is actually a tool that writers use to help make and create their stories. Michael J. Straczynski of Babylon 5 uses it. Stephen King uses it. And it's not writing it for you, it's just helping you plot it out because there are certain elements in stories. There's a structure to everything. It may even be formulaic to a degree. And the thing is, it helps you make a plot, resolution, I forget the name of it, a rising action and an aftermath, all that stuff. And it's pretty kind of cool. I could see, yes, I picked it up because I was like, I wonder if how well this would motivate me to kind of create a story a little bit. And so I just picked it up, and I haven't tested it out yet. Will it actually create a good story, or is it just kind of would it be too generic after a while? We'll see. It's just for fun, and I'm going to check it out. So right now, that's shelf number 4. All right, so let's get into the Wargame Glut that I have here. And this is going to be a good example of how I draw the line and try to make a clean break in the games that I want and what I don't want, and make specific rules. The whole thing started because I ended up getting the one game that you see there in the top left, not Armageddon, but World War I. My friend over at Wargame Blockhead, the link is down below for his blog, and it's kind of funny, he does block war games, but he wanted to play this one, and I haven't had a World War I game, and it is a folio game. So I definitely wanted to grab it, and I am going to do a video on it. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. I've been reading the rules, and it's all standard stuff, quite honestly. For all the rules that are in there, it's only 8 pages of rules, but it's really standard war game stuff. So it's not, but the way they do it, it does look like it has that feel of the back and forth trench warfare that you see, and that's what I think will happen when I start playing. Anyway, what I do is I've been excited because I've been taking games that weren't necessarily folio games, but found out that I could take a lot of SPI games and do that. Not to their bigger games, but they got enough small games out there, and the genre specific to science fiction and fantasies, such as the BSM Pandora series, The Creature that Ate Sheboygan, Damocles Mission, maybe a few others. And the thing is, I said, okay, I'll do that to a few of the historical games too, because I'm not against historical games. It's just that you're not going to see me go out and buy specific battles unless there's a reason to, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So what made the cut and what didn't? Well, out of all the ones you see here, Armageddon, Tito, and Paratroop made it. So let's go over why they made it before I talk about why the other ones didn't. Armageddon is a nice little generic game for swords and sandal combat from the year 3000 to 500 BC. Okay, that's a long span of time, so there's a lot of wars that went on, but technology didn't change. So they can just give you the units. It's pretty much DBA with chits. Okay, DBA with counters. DBA, for those of you who don't know, is Debellus Antiquities, which is a miniature game. Basically, they say, here's a foot troop, here's an archer troop, here's a cavalry, and that's it, generic. And then, boom, you don't change anything. It's like you want to play these guys against these guys. These guys had more horses. These guys had more spears. Except they had combinations of forces, and that's what you played with. And so that's what I'm seeing here. So that one's going to stick around. Tito is got an interesting map to it, and it reminded me, and I really want to play it to find out. But it reminded me of this more looks like a game of Twilight Struggle. And I wanted to see how close that is to that. It's a very different kind of movement system, it seems like, to move your units around. So this is the Partisan Army in Yugoslavia. So this is more of a game mechanic thing than anything else. And of course, the last one is Paratroop. I just thought there's 3 different battles about paratroops moving in, so it's based all off of paratrooping. So just because of the specific theme of it and the rules thereof, that is what I'm interested in. Okay, so what did make the cut? Well, I found out Patton's Third Army takes 4 hours to play. Right there, enough. It's out. I was hoping it would be a generic World War II game, because that's really what I'm looking for. Again, I'm not looking for a specific genre. A specific battle. I would love to see a generic micro war game, and I got a few here, but they didn't make it. Combined Arms didn't make it from 1939 to the 1970s. Now, I was hoping something like Armageddon, it would just be a generic game, but that spanned too many decades. And what they did was they gave everybody a special command card, and your units were generic, but they didn't have any stats on them. So your infantry unit would be, if you were playing 1930s, you'd have to check the chart to see how much strength it had and so forth. And in the 1970s, you're playing it and playing in Vietnam, it would be something different. And that makes sense. However, the idea of saying, okay, these chits are worth this much, that sounded like a hassle to me. And so that one was that was an easy out. Combat Command is a little bit heartbreaking, but I'm kind of glad I'm not keeping it. Combat Command, from what I understand, was supposed to be the newer version of Panzer Leader from Avalon Hill. And I like that idea, but first off, it's shaped differently. As you can see, all the other ones, they can easily fold up into a 8.5 by 5 by 5. There's only two or three sizes. Yeah, there's two sizes. There's the microgame format for metagaming, and there's the SPI folio size. If it doesn't meet those two sizes, I can't keep them there. And it's so oddball that I just can't fold it up. But also, it's a little bit too much. It's not really generic units. They're very specific units, all against France, basically, there. There are a lot of different tanks, so aficionados might enjoy that, but I want mine a little bit more generic. One of them that I really wanted to work was Zeppelin, again, because just like paratroops, Zeppelins, right? That's kind of cool. The game is a little bit long, and it's actually not from one of the major companies. I thought it was an SPI game, and it was not. The 30 Years War it has standard rules for the 30 Years War, and then there's more battles that it has. It's kind of like the Battle for Gondor and Sauron, those games from SPI. They have the basic rules, and then they have the battle-specific rules, which is just fine. But I didn't want to get the 30 Years War, and I see that one, and it's like, am I going to have to get the other ones too? It's like, maybe I'll be good enough of an excuse not to get that one. And the other two that are on the cusp for me, because they're beautiful maps, the Crusades and Operation Olympic, the invasion of Japan and the Crusades. Because one, the Crusades would be a beautiful genre game. And Operation Olympic, the invasion of Japan, is a naval game. So those ones are on the cusp. I think the reason I did not pick them up and make a decision on them yet is because I think they're very long. And I should be torn off by that. I might be keeping those two. Better safe than sorry. But I think they were very, very long. I think they were like 3 hours or so. But they're both beautiful maps, and they are specific. I feel like the Crusades are a specific game, and a naval battle. Like Columbia Games is Pacific Victory. That's different than a lot of the most war games are not sea based. So something like that to do in a complete invasion is pretty cool, unless you're doing D-Day, something other than D-Day, right? So I think those two I might just put in there and then make a decision later, but the other ones are definitely out. So that's how I'm trying to cut a line into the sand. I'm still up in the air on some. Maybe I'll play them and like them so much, and I'm talking about the Crusades and Operation Olympic, that they might stick around. Well, I'm excited to get some gaming in. I mean, this is the time to do it. The snow has finally decided to stick around after January 15th of all times. It gave us a taste of it on Halloween, which is where this picture is from. But now it's definitely thick and sticking around for like luggage for months. And a lot of you across America actually know what that's like right now. To live in Erie, Pennsylvania, with the snowfalls you're all getting on. And hopefully it's more temporary for you, because we can handle it out here. We got the snow plows and such. But anyway, guys, I'm definitely going to be getting some gaming in. I hope you take advantage of this time and get some gaming in too while it's cold outside. Stay warm, roll some dice, and I'll see you next video.